A red dot on the floor. They told me the cameras never stop rolling inside Black Dolphin. Not the ones bolted to the ceiling, those are obvious, blinking red eyes in hallways that smell faintly of bleach and boiled potatoes. I mean the other cameras, the ones inside people. The warden has one, the guards share a lens, and the inmates wear them behind their eyes like permanent bruises. Everyone is filming everyone else, even when no device is in sight. I stepped through the sally port just after dawn, the Volga's wind scraping the walls, my press badge tucked where it would do the least harm, visible enough to remind people I could make them immortal, forgettable enough that they'd talk like I wasn't there. This visit had taken 6 months of bargaining and a letter of introduction from a retired criminologist who owed me a favor. All I had to exchange was curiosity and the promise of discretion, currency both fragile and dangerous. "Your bag," a guard said. His name tag read Sokolov. The man had a cataloger's stare. He didn't look at people, he shelved them. I handed over my camera body, 2 lenses, batteries, and the kind of microphone that pretends not to record fear. He inspected each item, then slid a small, plastic evidence seal across the camera port. "You keep it," he said. "But we keep the power." A second guard, shorter, with the damp wool smell of long night shifts, clicked the counter. "One outsider," he announced to the air. "One risk." They led me inside, triple doors, a corridor, a second corridor, a staircase that felt designed to shorten the spine. On the landing, a painted red dot marked the floor. "Do not step on the dot," Sokolov said without looking back. "We all have our superstitions." He smiled, but it was the kind of smile a lock gives when it gets to do its job. The warden met us in an office whose walls were mostly maps, of the prison, of the town, of the river routes. He shook my hand like he was testing the integrity of a shelf bracket. "We don't hide what this place is," he said. "We hide how it survives. You may ask questions, but understand, truth here has permissions." The warden's left thumb was ink-stained. "Paperwork is a prison's pulse." I started with something soft. "Why allow a film at all?" "Because myths are parasites," he said, glancing at a monitor where a grainy hallway looped endlessly. "And parasites thrive in darkness." "Then you'll allow light?" "Just enough," he said. "A sterile beam. Not the kind that grows anything." We walked. The corridors were all variations of square tiles, square bars, square windows set too high for the horizon. Inmates passed in pairs, bent at right angles, hands crossed behind them. Blindfolds or averted eyes, it barely mattered. A guard murmured numbers as if taking attendance at a church that never dismissed. The sound of it built its own architecture inside me, thin and echoing. At the end of a corridor we reached a cell whose door looked less like an entrance and more like a confession. Sokolov unlocked it with the same ritualistic efficiency one uses to take communion. Inside, an inmate paced, heel to toe, measuring out the morning. His face was the kind that refuses to be remembered, not handsome, not ugly, merely permanent. The plaque outside the cell read, "Romanov, P. Life." A skein of pencil marks clung to the lower wall, each line the thickness of a heartbeat. Romanov stopped pacing when he heard the lock. He didn't step toward us, didn't perform innocence or menace. He simply stood and inhaled. "Do you still film wars?" he asked me, his voice as curious as it was courteous. "Sometimes," I said. "This is one," he said, nodding at the air. "Only the uniforms are different." I asked about his days, the hours, the routines, the tiny economies of time. He answered like a man who had memorized the choreography of survival. Breakfast. Inspection. Exercise. Silence. He told me that at Black Dolphin, the fiercest battles were fought at the edges, the last 5 minutes before lights out, the next 5 after. "We move like chess pieces," he said. "But the real game is to remember which rules are the lies." "Who lies?" I asked. He tilted his head toward the ceiling. The camera dome reflected all of us in miniature, like a snow globe that had forgotten winter. "Everyone," he said gently. "That's what keeps the air from freezing." the first betrayal appeared before lunch in the form of a forbidden gesture. We had been granted permission to film a workshop, a narrow room where men disassembled and reassembled wooden chairs that would never seat them. I shot the way their hands learned the grain, how the varnish made every fingerprint briefly immortal. Then, in the corner of my frame, a guard, young, earnest, trying very hard to be steel, tilted his head at the light fixture. It was nothing, a reflex. But one of the inmates mirrored the motion, a nearly imperceptible echo. The room tensed. We all felt it, 2 cameras pointing at the same source, one electric, one human. Sokolov's hand closed on my shoulder the way a vice believes in would. "We are done here," he said, voice friendly like an obituary. My camera clicked off with the suddenness of a severed word. Back in the corridor, the warden joined us, appearing as quietly as a doorframe. "We have a rule," he said, eyes on the floor. "The living never study the wiring." "I wasn't, you were seeing," he said. "It's enough." We moved again, down another corridor hung with metal doors like low thunder. I began to understand the prison's true geometry, not lines and right angles, but permissions, zones where the lens could travel and zones where it could not. The map on the warden's wall had been honest. It simply hadn't informed me that in this place, the shortest distance between 2 truths is a lie told in a polite voice. In the infirmary, an older inmate lay on a cot, pale as a postage stamp. His name was Alex, or that's what the nurse called him, and if it wasn't his name, it fit him like a borrowed coat. He studied my camera with an expression halfway between prayer and arithmetic. "You film pain?" he asked. "I film people," I said. He nodded like that was the same answer. "If you see Misha," he told the nurse, "tell him the medicine is working." The nurse's eyes flicked to mine. Later, outside the door, she whispered, "There is no Misha. But the medicine works only when someone is waiting for it." "Who invented him?" I asked. "Everyone," she said, and moved away down the hall, leaving the word echoing like a footstep that doesn't match the corridor's rhythm. By afternoon the corridors felt narrower, the air fatter with small sounds, keys chattering, boots arguing with stone, doors clearing their throats. We paused at a tiny records room where boxes sat in modest towers. Sokolov opened one. Inside were cassettes, the old kind, plastic ghosts of former lives. "Confession tapes," he said. "From another era." He lobbed one to me. The label was handwritten, R412, the Archivist. "What's this?" I asked, returning it. "Legends," he said. "A man who convinced everyone he remembered everything. Asked no favors, made no friends. He catalogued people until they feared they'd become pages." Sokolov shrugged. "He's gone." "Dead?" I asked. "Transferred," Sokolov said. "Which is sometimes the same thing." I pocketed the word archivist like a souvenir, meaning to forget it. I didn't. The real betrayal arrived just before evening count. We had returned to Romanov's wing to film a final segment, routine, containment, the poetry of repetition. I set my camera high, framing the narrow symmetry of the corridor just as a trolley rolled by distributing supper trays. The carts left will can it into a shallow groove. A tray slipped, clattered, and the guard nearest it, young, earnest, reached down. He set the tray upright and, unintentionally, slid a small folded note back into it with his thumb. I saw it. Romanov saw me see it. The camera's red tally light stayed dark, Sokolov's seal had ensured the illusion of silence, but some part of me kept rolling, reflex and habit. Romanov took the tray without a glance, moved it to his bunk, and ate with the slow attention of a man taking dictation from his future. Only when he reached the center portion did he pause, just briefly, just enough. His fingers found the note, folded it into the crease of his palm, then under the mattress in a single motion so fluid it might have been a nervous twitch. Afterward, when the corridor had exhaled and the metal thunder had settled back into the walls, I asked Sokolov for a final interview spot, the landing near the staircase with the painted red dot. He agreed. The warden met us there, hands behind his back. I raised my powered butt-muzzled camera and asked, "What is the cost of control?" He considered the question, then me. You think this place is a machine that turns men into something else, he said. It is. But it also turns truth into ration. You cannot swallow it in one meal. You will choke. And myths? I said. Do they still feed on darkness? They are light, he replied. The dangerous kind. As we spoke, a shadow moved at the edge of the landing, young, earnest guard, eyes too bright, jaw clenched exactly once every 10 seconds, like a metronome. He had the look of a man holding an answer that might poison him or cure him depending on the timing. He stepped close enough that I could smell the paper in his pocket. When our eyes met, his pupils widened, then narrowed in a decision. He dropped his gaze to the painted red dot and placed his boot carefully beside it, not on it. A superstition obeyed. A rule acknowledged. After your shift, he whispered, almost imperceptibly, not to me and not to the warden but to the hungry air between us, check the cassette labeled R412. I didn't move. The warden didn't turn. The corridor did not breathe. But somewhere in the prison's circuitry, a relay clicked, a sound so small it could have been imagined. The hallway light above us flickered once, then held. I thought you said the Archivist was gone, I murmured to Sokolov as we left. He is, Sokolov said. And yet. Back in the entry office, as my camera was unsealed, I noticed a small smear of ink on the warden's thumb, darker than before. He held the box of confiscated tapes just a fraction too long before locking it. You have what you need? He asked. For now, I said. He nodded. Remember our rule about wiring. I promised nothing and everything, the way journalists do when the story starts to drag its own gravity. Outside, the sky over the Volga had gone the color of old film stock. I put the camera in my bag, but the world didn't dim. I could still see the red, the folded note, the hungry look in the young guard's eyes. I could still hear Romanov's gentle certainty, the real game is to remember which rules are the lies. The wind lifted. Somewhere in the prison, a door shut with the businesslike finality of a period. I thought of the cassette, R412, and the way the warden's ink-stained thumb had hovered over the box. I thought of myths that glow like night lights, just bright enough to keep a child from seeing the shapes that keep watch. The cameras here never stop. Even with the device powered down and the evidence seal discarded, I felt them recording, the prison's, the guards', Romanov's, and mine. And as I stood in the shadow of the walls that could make a man forget the sound of his own footsteps, I realized the twist I hadn't expected. I had come here to film the psychological war inside Black Dolphin. But the first cut it made was inside me.